Welcome all. Psyched. Tonight, everybody's been sitting on the edge of their seats waiting for the Kahana XC Pearls and Wisdom episode. So, yeah, we got a little round table of folks here to hit Alex with questions and stuff, but I wanted to make sure we had some pilots of varying degrees of experience and airtime at Kahana to get their perspectives. So I think I'd like Chase, if you're there, bud, fire up your mic, and I'd like to hear kind of how you've found Kahana and what sort of things you've been experiencing flying there, and what psychs you about the place, and what might be frustrating, and what you'd like to learn more about. And then we'll use that to parlay over to Alex to kind of focus his leadership on the issues. So Chase.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, first off, thank you guys for doing these series. I believe it or not, I'm probably one of multiple people that actually like listen to recordings when I can't hop in. So yeah, definitely learn a lot. But yeah, happy to provide context is one of the beginners, and I consider myself on the conservative end of beginners in terms of like safety and just kind of being wary of not burning sites and getting on people's bad side, locals around sites. So but yeah, I mean, I obviously did my first flights at Kahana with Pete and Kincaid. It's an amazing place to learn. I mean, definitely more experience on East Launch versus North. But, as I've flown with, you guys over the past couple of years, definitely going to North Launch more and more. I'm kind of at my point in progression where, I'm very comfortably getting up from East Launch, North Launch. And proceeding up to, I always pronounce the peak wrong. Is it PA? Is that right?
Yeah,
PA. Yeah.
PA, yeah. So I mean, I feel like I can consistently get up to PA, and I know that's kind of your initial source of lift. And I'm at the point now where I'm definitely like pushing across the bay, but I'm not really ready to commit to fully going across. Just some context, I'm still on a low B, kind of light on my Ozone Buzz Z6. Jack graciously gave me his pod. I'm really excited to get experimenting with that when we get some trades back. But yeah, and hopefully by the end of the year progress into a high B. But I'm really having difficulties with sync getting across the bay. I've really tried to target obviously a more north day. A little difficult to get up on a light north day for myself. So happy to hear tips there. But yeah, I mean, I think at one point I was at 2,300 feet one day. I was like, I got it. This is the day. And just hitting wall of sync on a pretty north day, and just not willing to commit to, having to go land at Swanzy's potentially. I think we had a yard landing around that time, and I definitely didn't want to push my luck with that. But yeah, that's some context. I can field any questions from you guys too. Just asking about my experience if you had any.
No, cool. So from what I'm hearing, sounds like you're ready to talk about like at what point do you need to abort like a transition, and like having like some back, like plan A, what's my plan A, plan B, plan C. So like learning kind of what the landmarks are, where you need to be at what altitude, where you can still make it to this spot versus that spot, and when you have to turn around and still have like perfectly safe LZs and reach, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be a great thing to go into. I mean, I know mine, I always turn around if I'm not 800 feet, over Crouching Lion. I'd love to hit it at 1,000 someday. It's kind of been my goal to really kind of push my comfort zone and go down the coast a little bit. But another consideration to go into too is maybe, I think Patrick, you brought up with me, like, why not consider doing some more north cross country first? Because it sounds like that may be even more inviting, conditions permitting, and maybe you guys could go into what those conditions are to dip my toes into that.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. I think we've given Alex some meat to bite into here. You want to kind of talk us through your site, Alex?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been flying there 25 years, which is just blows my mind when I think about that. I know I've forgotten more than I'll be able to talk about, but I can say that our ideas of what we can do at Kahana from Kahana have evolved a lot over the years. And we started out really only flying to the north. because it was easier in the tailwind, and we didn't have any concept that we could go the other way, except on maybe the rare super northeast perfect strength days we could get up and cross the bay. But probably only the most experienced guys on hot gliders were doing that. So we would content ourselves going north, and we learned to fly to Punalu'u, get up there, cross to the next ridge at Hau'ula, get up there, cross to the ridge behind Pounders, maybe get up a little there, and then land at Pounders. And we did that for probably, I did that at least 10 or 15 years. And then we figured out we could go even farther than Pounders and Laie. We would cross Laie Point, go to Kahana, Hukila, Kahana, all the way to Kahuku Golf Course, and a couple of times Turtle Bay Golf Course. So going that way gives you a lot more options. The landings are safe. We now know there's a possibility of coming back if you don't go too far. Let's say don't go past Pounders. You have a good chance of working your way back. And we've sort of put all that together over the years and expanded our horizons a lot. And in the same way, we've figured out that we can cross the bay on a lot more days than we thought. And so we'll go to the south. If hopefully we have a little bit of north to help us, but on a hotter glider now, we can do it even on days that are not north at all, and even maybe a bit southeast. We'll be doing it, and it's not something you would try on a lower rated glider, but it's possible to do it, and it's pretty interesting. So I guess the first thing I would say about crossing the bay is, we still there? Yeah, whiteboard is crossing the bay should not be your first objective at Kahana. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Maybe you should be going north. And we always started out by going north. And I think you will learn a lot more by hitting the ridges downrange, we call it, and figuring out maybe if you can hop back uprange along those ridges before you do the most dangerous crucial crossing, which is across a body of water with no LZs at the end. So it's just a very tricky, somehow crossing the bay has become kind of like a little I don't know, merit badge that people want to get, like, oh, I haven't crossed the bay yet, I'm going to cross the bay today. And I'm like, wow, you never even went the other way. It's weird to think you want to cross the bay right away. Like it's a kind of a complicated and tricky and dangerous issue. And then I try to explain to people, well, the reason you don't want to do that is the direction's not great. There's no LZs over there. A lot of people have landed in this tree and that tree and the fish pond and so on. But people still, somehow it's attractive, more attractive than the other. And I don't know why that is, but we can give you some good tips for how to approach it. And it's definitely something to work on, but you want to do it more carefully than the other option, which is just easier. You got landings everywhere. So, I mean, I think that's the main distinction. You can learn a lot about thermaling going north from Kahana. There's some really great thermal sources. Crossing the bay is not really about thermaling. It's just like math, it's like vectors and lift and sink. And maybe if you get a little farther along, it might be about finding a nice cloud to help you along on a day when you need a little extra height halfway through. You time it so there's a nice cloud in front of you, get some lift off of that and keep going. But yeah, I mean, I think you're doing the right thing. You're on a low B. That is for sure a handicap in a very technical transition like crossing the bay. So you're going to want the more northeast days, and you're going to want to have a day where you pretty much feel like you need to get off of north launch to make that day work, and that's going to be the best day to cross the bay. And you're probably going to get all your height off the front, off of the Rhino Horn. And you just need to get as high as you can there. On those northeast days, you're not going to want to drift back to UPA because the lift won't be working there. You'll either get parked back there or you'll get flushed down the sides of it because the lift isn't collecting there. It really collects on the front on the best north days. And so on those days, you just got to kind of noodle around the front until you get as high as you can. And hopefully there's other people with you, see where they're getting the highest, go where they're at, get as high as you can. And then, don't jump the gun and think, well, everyone's going, but I'm not as high as I want. You want to get as high as you can. And then you'll get across on those days. And as far as committing, once you're, let's say 3/4 of the way across, you're looking at your height, you're looking at where you're at, you know, should I continue? When you do commit, you pretty much, yeah, you pretty much on the good northeast days, you're going to find that if, let's say you're 3/4 of the way across, there's a point where you're not even at the crouching line. I mean, you're not even at the crouching line yet, and you're going to start feeling some lift already. That's the best days. And that's the days that hopefully, if you're on a lower B, those are going to be your friend. So you don't want to find yourself in a wall of sink over there. The best way to avoid that is getting as high as you can, taking a wider line if you need to, but on a more northeast day, like the ones that I'm suggesting you try, you won't even need to take a wide line. A straight line will be fine, and you can aim pretty much right at the crouching line, and you should be feeling some lift before you have to commit to something weird. And committing to something weird just means going in low and not knowing if you're going to get up. That's a feeling that you don't want to have. So you shouldn't have to do that on the better days. When you get to a little farther along and you've done it a few times on those northeast days, and then you're trying it on more east days, you will find it's trickier, and you do have to commit to some weirdness where you're getting in lower and you're scratching around and wondering, when do I need to pull the plug? Have I gone too far? I better get out of here. You know, there's a whole lot of things that go through your head there.
You want to fire
But,
up a screen share and kind of like just take us on a little tour of the neighborhood? So like if I'm a visitor and I'm
Yeah.
watching this, I can.
For sure, yeah. Let's do
Jack's raised his hand too. What's up, Jack?
Hey, Alex, wanted to pick your brain on those northeast days, in terms of wind strength. So if it's stronger, I assume we can get away with departing lower, but getting back, our tolerances for safety, I think, goes down a little bit, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Like, if I were Chase, I'd be like, oh, this is great. You know, like 15 out of the northeast, I'll make it, I think. You know, like,
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say necessarily so. I realize the lighter
Mhm.
days are harder to get as high of a start. And on the stronger days, I think the problem you're going to have is, even though it's north, the strength of it will change your crab angle to such a degree that you're not going to have a great line across. So you still need to get as high as you can on a stronger day if that's what you're going to try to do. I don't think it's an advantage in terms of crossing.
What is a
Better would be the
Mhm.
lighter north days where you can actually take advantage of maybe some bubbles of thermal lift, you know, not just pure ridge lift, and get a little higher that way. Or if it's a day with some clouds, you know, work those clouds, figure out how to get a little advantage on your start.
What was the I'm not suggesting that we do the lowest, but I remember one time you flew, it was like northeast, it was like perfect northeast, and you said, oh, this is the lowest I ever left. I think it was like 1650 or 1800, just to set a floor for our audience here on the northeast departures.
Yeah, I mean, for our audience, I don't know what the answer to that is. For me, I found there isn't a height that's too low to do it once you get to the point where you're charging on a two-liner like a lot of us are. So I've gone probably left as low as 800 or 1,000 and made it across, because I don't know why. Just on a certain day, you got a Bodie line and you're just like milking zeros all the way across, and suddenly you're halfway across and you didn't lose anything, and you're like, well, I think I'm just going to keep going. And then you get there, you hardly lost anything. And I don't know how those days work, what exactly that's about, but there's no minimum floor. But for a new pilot or a visitor on a low B or something, you need to be as high as you can. You don't want to think about the minimum. You want to think about who got the highest today and why didn't I get that high before I started. I think working on how high you start is a better exercise than working on lines. You know, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that built-in initial advantage, and then you have the luxury of more lines the higher you can. Yeah. So we're talking about getting as high as we can here over Rhino Horn on a north day. On a north day, you get up there and you can pretty much just go straight across. Sorry, my hand's a little shaky, but you guys seeing that okay?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. So that's a pretty straight line. Doesn't look like you lost much height, because on a northeast day, you won't lose nearly as much height. On a more east day, you're taking off from east launch and you're getting up working your way back to Pu'upi'e. From here, you want to get as high as you can, and then you want to work your way along the ridge line. This is like slightly faded over to the right because the wind will be blowing a nice crest of lift just behind the ridge line. So you're as high as you can at the back, and then you head out front. And if you can find the right line over the crest of that ridge out in this direction, you will lose almost nothing getting to the front, maybe 50 feet, 100 feet. And that's what you're aiming for. Then you're in the front, you can decide how far out you can go to get, this is on a more east day, how far you can go before you can get over to here. This is the place you have to get on an east day. That's like the first little feature of the near shoulder of Hidden Valley. And then you'll work your way up there. But I can't understate how much you can conserve your height from Pu'upi'e here to come out here. It's really going to help you. And especially on a low B, you're going to need all the advantage you can get. That's a huge advantage to be able to start here higher than you could have got in any other way. And then if you got this wall of wind and sink coming this way, the more you can get your line wide around it without losing too much altitude. You know, I don't know if if you're flying with an instrument that's easy for you to make sense of, but it's good to have some way to see what your lift and sink and glide ratio is along a transition like this, because you can really make adjustments along the way based on what you're seeing there, because you won't necessarily feel it until it gets pretty extreme.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm flying right now. It's kind of like rudimentary, but just with XC tracker on my phone. Probably need to get some batteries and whatnot as well.
Yeah. Having a screen to look at with some numbers is pretty helpful for learning to make these transitions. But even before, I mean, we used to do this before we had any kind of good instruments. Maybe we had a beeping vario at most at first, and so having that and a compass or something, at least having that is a good start. But the other thing is, a lot of times there's clouds at Kahana that will affect what's going on, and sometimes we can't get as high as we want because there's a cloud base that's in our way. And definitely anybody, a newer pilot looking to start going XC is going to be concerned about clouds at Kahana and in the neighborhood. So that's something that's just a fact of life over there, and you have to get comfortable dodging them, getting to the bottom of them, but not inside them, and taking advantage of them, because they actually can be quite helpful. But you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you're whited out or losing your orientation. Pretty crucial. We definitely had plenty of mishaps where people didn't get that right. Let's see.
Can you talk about like setting up your departure, like being at the back of Pu'upi'e and then watching the clouds come in and trying to like time it so that you're intersecting them like right where they're going to be the most helpful?
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to do. I feel like for me, that's worked out more a matter of luck than anything else. But a lot of times, let's see, go back to my screen share, my screen shot. So yeah, a lot of times you'll launch and you'll get up here and you'll be up here trying to get as high as you can. But a lot of times there's going to be clouds boating in that will be lower than you, and you don't want to be sucked into them, caught in them. And so you'll end up heading out, not so much of your own timing, but on the timing to avoid some of the bigger clouds coming at you. And that sometimes will just send you automatically on your way. You'll hit speed bar, try to get some speed and some sink and get below that cloud, maybe just in the right time to milk the lift under it and get out here higher than you would have otherwise. Or at least you've dodged it. Maybe you can turn back, work the bottom of that one, climb up the front of it, and then you're a lot higher. So there's things you could do to give yourself an advantage. But a lot of the timing is going to end up being luck as far as you may be chased out of Pu'upi'e because too many clouds are coming in, and then you head out front. But at that point, the clouds are your friend, and you can use them if they're boating along the front here. You can use them to really improve your line without getting sucked into them. The ones over the water are going to be a lot more chill than the ones that that make it all the way into Pu'upi'e. But over the water, those clouds are going to help you get across here. So in terms of timing with the clouds, you want to dodge the clouds that are trying to swallow you, and then take advantage of the clouds that can help you. That makes sense.
Yeah. I saw Jack hand again. Jack, you muted, maybe?
Sorry, but I was muted. Exactly. Hey, you guys want to talk about crossing? Oh, this is about crossing, but I want to talk about terminal approach to Swansea Beach Park. So you guys have other topics. I'll wait. I'll hold my question.
No, that's a good, I think it's a good time to talk about that. We're still on bay crossing. So the
Okay.
thing about the bay
Hey.
crossing, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, the thing about bay crossing that makes it potentially the trickiest thing you can do from Kahana is because they're at the crux point where you're getting low coming in from Kahana. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Let's see. No, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, anyway. At the crux point when you're getting low over Crouching Lion, if you're not going to get up, you have some critical decisions to make. You have to decide whether you're high enough to still make it back to the launch at Kahana, which would be plenty high if you've left enough margin for that, and then you have a chance to work your way up and try again. Or if you're not high enough for that, you at least hopefully have height enough to get back to the LZ. And a lot of times that's gonna, if it's a more east day, that's probably going to require that you take a little wider line and not like straight over the fish pond, because that's going to be a sinky line, and it's going to make it harder to make it. So you want to take a wider line off a Crouching Lion, even though it's a little disconcerting to head out into the middle of the bay when you're not as high as you want to be, but you're going to get a better line if you do that. Otherwise, let's say you've committed further and you're not thinking of retreating back to Kahana. At some point, you have to decide, are you going to make Swanseas? Hopefully you haven't committed to the level where you don't have Swanseas. That's really the trickiest, that's the real danger place that you could find yourself, is if you've crossed and committed and you're too low to either retreat comfortably or to make it to Swanseas. And hopefully we're not talking about that situation, but I mean, the places people have landed in between are none of them are great. There's yards people have managed to land in miraculously, like some of these slightly larger yards. People have landed on the shoreline, the little rocky shoreline here, or a little bit in the water. People have landed at Swanseas on this little gravel area here, just short. That's actually pretty hair-raising to make it over the water and then land on that rocky beach, but it's been done. Yeah,
Hey,
and
Alex?
otherwise Swansea's is a great LZ, but generally it's not a place you're going to have in your pocket as a backup for not making it. We think of it as a place to land if you did make it into Hidden Valley here and you're scratching and still not making it up because it's that light of a day, and then you do have Swanseas available. Go ahead,
Hey,
Jack.
Alex, can we take a step back? And this is really an awesome opportunity to pick through your thought process. So this is what I'm trying to figure out. So you said earlier that, if you've decided to make, if you've committed, if we take a step back, Alex, what's going through your head for that decision matrix? Like, at what point do you say, like, oh, I think, or I'm committed? What are you thinking of in terms of safety, in terms of the technical, in terms of what you can make? Because as a beginner, I know, I wish someone went over this with me, and I can't even articulate it myself, but if you have a process in your mind for making those decisions, I think that'd be very valuable to sort of understand.
Yeah, I don't know if I have it in my mind quite as quite as structured as as you'd want to hear. Like it's not, I don't know. These days, I think I go more by feel and experience, but pretty much I'm coming in over here and you see this first little chimney. I want to be able to pull in there and know that I'm getting some lift already, right? You see that chimney that I'm talking about right here? This beautiful formation, right? So
Yes.
that's the place, that's the height and the place that I think I want to come in and start getting some lift already. Let's see. Yeah. Or basically the little, even the this little sort of knob right in front of it is an ideal place that you want to start, want to start feeling some lift. If you're not getting lift there, you should get out, is the way I look at it. There's no other, that's how you're going to dig yourself out from a pretty low arrival. And if you want to commit, you need to find something there. Does that make sense? You see the place I'm talking about?
And
It's
and
kind of
that's
like a
on
little,
that's on a more northeast day, because like on an east day, you just be, I mean, that's when that's
yeah,
rubble,
actually
right?
people can make it work on a more east day, but I really don't want to be coming in that low on an east day at that place. Yeah, I'd much rather be coming in like over here, somewhere on an east day. Uh, I mean, really, this is the ridge on an east day. This little low sloping ridge is the one we're aiming for. It's the very beginning of Hidden Valley, and we want to come in there on an east day. So yeah, on a more northeast day, or not too east of a day, you might consider coming in just on the far side of this chimney here, and then work your way up that ridge line. But I mean, obviously, you're looking upwind. At a certain point, you could be getting into sideways mechanical rotor off these upwind ridges, and that's what you'll feel it if you're not sure how east it is. You come in at that place, you got a little bit of lift, you're milking some zeros, you're going forward, and suddenly your wing feels like super sloppy and slippery. You're in the lee of that ridge, that little spur ahead, and you need to get out, and you'll feel it's just like a little waterfall and snake out to your left, and it'll push you out like with a kick and say, get out of there. And then you might have a chance to regroup, get some lift, back up a little bit, try again, or just decide it's due east and get out.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like my thought process, and to Jack's question, my algorithm is I'll keep going if I'm certain I can retreat to the beach to the LZ. And
Yeah.
generally, like on my hook 5, like I would cross crouching or the crouching line area maybe like 1,000 feet. And if it was okay, I'd keep going. And then if I was getting to like that middle spur area and I still wasn't finding lift, then I would just bail, because I knew that I could still retreat, if I had close to 1,000 feet to still get all the way back to the LZ, even if I wasn't certain I could make it to Swanzy's. And then I would
Right.
never go further than that unless I was certain I could see that I could make Swanzy's. Because until you've started flying Hidden Valley, you're not confident of getting lift there. You don't really know the place. And so Swanzy's is sort of like your only landmark almost.
Right.
So once you're positive that you could stick Swanzy's, then you can leave the Kahana LZ behind. And that's probably a conservative decision tree, because if you can make Swanzy's, you absolutely can make Hidden Valley, like the opening of Hidden Valley, the ramp, that little kicker that Alex was just showing us there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something to add, like where Alex was just pointed like a minute ago. You can get really parked there easily, and I got so parked one time that my Fly Sky High app shut off. It thought I
Oh
landed.
God, it thought you'd landed.
I was
Yeah.
zero, like parked and not really moving, but I ended up working my way up. I think it was like more north, like 100 degrees, or maybe in the
Yeah.
high 90s. I thought I could take it easy, but I got parked.
Yeah. So that is a Venturi. Even on a north day, it can get pretty strong there, and you need to be aware of that. The wind, it just funnels. It funnels there even on a north day. It's trying to get into the bay.
Yeah.
So
I saw
it's a
Ryan's got a question too.
yeah.
Oh, hey, Alex, this is great. Great stuff. Was wondering if you could, when you're done talking about this, back up and talk a little bit more about the identifying the clouds when you're crossing the bay, which clouds you can look at and think, all right, I'm going to get lift off of that, versus which cloud you're looking at and thinking, I need to stay clear of that because it's going to suck me up into the white room. That's something I'm struggling with, is just judging which clouds are good and which clouds need to be avoided.
Yeah, God, I wish I had some good visual aids of like pictures of both kinds. But I mean, honestly, that's just gonna that takes a little bit of experience judging the clouds and maybe judging a given day for what kind of clouds to expect. But hopefully that's
You
something
mentioned
that,
something about clouds that make it into the ridge line versus clouds that are still crossing the
yeah,
bay. That didn't really make sense. Can you talk a little bit more about that, maybe?
yeah, I guess I feel like the clouds that have made it to the back of Pu'upa, where we know that's a pumping lifty spot, you're likely to get pumped into that cloud. The lift coming up from below and the cloud in training lift is going to be uh, accelerating you into that cloud in a way that's hard to stay out of. Whereas if you're heading out and you're over the water and you approach a cloud, it's not going to exert nearly the same strength on you. You don't have the lift coming up from below. The cloud might give you some gentle suction, which is what you'd be looking for at that point. It's a different effect.
So this is basically the same cloud, just different location where the
It
cloud
could
is.
very well be. That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
I gotcha.
That's what I
Okay,
mean.
thanks.
And I think the clouds also gain energy as they hit the land and the heat, and they get more worrisome as far as like staying out of them.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
If I may pitch in there briefly, and sorry I joined late, but I have been by the PA trying to head out in the middle of the bay. I had instances where I was on full bar trying not to get sucked into the cloud. And when you're in the middle of the bay or out there, you don't have that much suction, so to speak, or lift under the clouds. So I wanted to mention that.
So Olivier, are you saying the same thing I'm saying, which is that out over the water, the clouds aren't exerting as much pull on you?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I wanted to just echo with my own experience and the few times where you climb up a PA, turn around, look outside towards the bay, and then suddenly you realize, oh, I'm a little above cloud base here.
Yeah, yeah,
If I
yeah.
continue, I'm gonna get into the cloud, and you push out, and there's still lift, even some distance away from PA. And so I step on the bar, and I step some more on the bar, try to aim for a spot under the cloud that is more clear or a little or higher in order not to get into the cloud. But there has been instances where I really had to push on the bar and to have a higher sink, and I was still going up, by the way.
Yeah,
But this has never happened further away
right.
into the.
Right. Yeah. No, I think with experience, we've all found that same thing happens, that you can get a lot more suction when the clouds make it over to Pu'upa versus if you can aim to intercept them when they're over the middle of the bay or somewhere out over the water. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I don't know if you've been discussing this before I joined in, but between the corner of crouching lion there and the very beginning of Swanzy, I measured this by car. So take this with a grain of salt, it's not that precise, but there's about maybe just a little over half a mile in distance. So when you're coming over there at the corner, and you're thinking, do I have the glide? It's just over 800 meters. So it's just a little over a half a mile there. So if you don't have the glide with the wind coming straight facing at you, you really want to make an early decision to turn around. And that's I had my own trigger there. Generally, if I'm at the corner there and I'm like 1,100 feet or 1,200 feet, I know I'm not going to make it on a regular east day when the winds are just flowing along the coastline here.
Yeah.
But these are my own personal trigger because I know at 900, even 900 feet and just below 900 feet, I know I can turn around Hellas all the way back to launch and I have no problem. I've turned around a little later, around 800 feet or so, and well, I had to divert to the beach because I was really too low.
Yeah. Those are
So
good numbers. Yeah,
yeah,
I
these
tell
are my own triggers.
I tell visitors or brand new pilots, you know, you want to don't leave with less than 1,000. If you get to 1,000, you should get out of there. But what you're saying, 900, 800, those numbers are a little more realistic, but getting into the margin a little bit. So
Yeah, so for me, if I get below 900, I'm eating my margin. That's what it
yeah,
is.
right.
But I know that if I'm arriving at the corner and I don't have like 1,500 feet in altitude, I'm not going to make it across the bay on a regular
Mhm.
each day, that is.
Okay, Alex, you want to maybe just talk us through the Swansea's approach because there's a bunch of hazards over there, and then we can start maybe looking the other way at like Punalu'u and beyond.
Great. Yeah. So the Swansea's approach, I mean, yeah. So I only ever approach one way, which is right across this central section of beach here in front of that palm tree, like between the big clumpy trees and that first palm. I approach right there, and I want to be as low as I can be. If I'm so low that I screw it up and I end up on the sand, I'm not going to be bummed out about that. But I do want to be reasonably low. I don't want to get onto Swansea's field and maybe get some weird swirly air coming off these upwind trees, or depending upon how east it is. But I want to be pretty much in the nearest corner of the grass to the sand there, right through that gap. That to me is the biggest, most comfortable place to set up my approach. There is a sign posted there, you know, don't feed the birds, or some sign, I don't know, park sign that you
You
need
can
to
see
watch
the
out for.
shadow. Yeah, you can see it on the map, the shadow of it sitting
Right there. Yeah, right in the center
Couple of
here.
them.
Yeah, a couple of signs. So watch out for those signs, but that is the approach that I like. It works even on the most east of days, and it's to me the least risky.
Cool.
And that's assuming you're not so low that you're actually blazing in from that low spur and just getting there over the fire station or whatever route you took and just coming straight in, bombing straight in. I mean, hopefully you're not that low because there's power lines and other stuff to watch out for. But hopefully you've left enough altitude to head out and come in from the beach. That's the best approach.
From that picture, the beach looks pretty nice and wide. In reality, is this an option for landing? Because that's essentially
It is, yeah,
in the right
it is.
direction.
That beach is always there. It may not be quite as high as it looks in this picture. This may be low tide, but the beach is always there. It's always an option.
Okay.
And like I said, amazingly, some people have landed on this pile of gravel. So if you've really cut it short, that's an option that people have got away with. It's not a good place to land at all, but at least you might not get wet. So yeah, you guys want to move to the other direction? I don't know. We probably haven't kicked this dead horse of bay crossing completely, but if do
We
you,
can come
you guys
back
have
to
any
it.
more? Yeah, we can come back to it. Any more thoughts? Let me know.
Yeah.
But going the other way is just magically better because there's no bodies of water to worry about sinking into here. So, you know, this is all going to be fun for you guys. I think there's so much. I think there's a lot more going on downwind in this direction than we realize, and it's I think it could be super useful for you guys going XC. So pretty much here, I'll see if I can draw a picture here. There it is. Okay, I'm going to make a screenshot and I'll draw some diagrams. Yeah, so typically what you're going to do, get up here, Kahana, and this applies to like any average direction day, like not super north, but you know, like an average trade wind day that's not too strong. Let's say 10 miles an hour, 105 degrees. So you'll get up here at Pu'upa if it's a light enough day, and let's say not quite 10 miles an hour, maybe 7 or something, you could actually go straight across. But it took me a long time before I started doing that. The more conservative, comfortable option is get high there, work your way back out to the front as if you might be crossing the bay, but instead you go this way. And then you're going to pull in, depending upon how high you are, let's say halfway across this valley, you decide, do I want to come in at the front and work my way up a little higher, or can I angle it more to aim to the back? If you're high enough, you can skip working the front, which can often be a bit of a struggle, and you save yourself some struggle by doing that. So if you're high enough, let's say I want to be, yeah, I want to be higher than, like, I think my number that I think to myself as I'm crossing over is, if I'm 1900 as I'm approaching that ridge, I'll veer to the back, or even between 17 and 19, maybe I'll veer to the back. Otherwise, I know I'm going to have to come to the front, and I'll probably come into the front around like 15 or 16 and work my way up. I don't really want to come in at 15 to 16 in the back there. But let's say you're 17, 19, you can go to the back, or if you worked your way up from the front, you get back here. And then this is Sacred Falls, really great area for lift. You can get pretty high here on a day with nice high clouds that aren't sucking you up too bad. You can work your way back along this ridge and get nice and high. And it's gorgeous back there. From here, you'll come back and decide if you want to keep going. You cross, a conservative line would be to come out front and then cross over to this. I think, is this the formation here? This is the nipple formation. Cross over to here. You've basically come out front and then gone back in here, and then work your way up there. And then you can keep going, go back out front over to, this is Sucker Hill behind Tamura's here. And you can work your way up here a little ways. And then from here, you could decide, do I want to try to go back? Or there's a great landing here at Pounders, which we always used to use. If you want to go past Pounders, if you want to see how far you can get to the north, your best option is to not have gone to that Sucker Hill or even the hill before that, but to work your way up here as high as you possibly can, and then take a line out to like the golf course. But if you're just exploring these ridges, you won't get as high as you did over Sacred Falls. Sacred Falls is the place where, or you know, that corner of Boogaland is where you're going to get the highest by far, on a day when the clouds are comfortable for you to do that. And then from there, from that point, I've found you're going to be able to glide the farthest. Whereas if you want to tour these ridges, that's great, but you're never going to get as high as you could back there. And so you'll be at a disadvantage of how far you can go. But a lot of times we do it just because it's fun and interesting to explore those places, and then we'll like turn around somewhere here and then try to get back. And we've found that it's a fun exercise to get back. It'll take you longer because you're definitely going to be at least slightly into a headwind. But these transitions in this direction, coming back here, are going to be easier and safer than the bay crossing one, because you got landings all the way, and they're not as far. These transitions aren't as big. So coming back from Sucker Hill to the nipple, from the nipple to Sacred Falls, even from Sacred Falls to Kahana, which is the biggest of them, is not as big of a crossing as crossing the bay, and you got landings all the way. So I think it's a better exercise to learn those upwind transitions. By the time you get good at those, the bay crossing will be a lot easier for you, I think.
So in that zone, when you're making those upwind transitions, are you thinking your primary LZ is the beach? Or are you ever like considering landing elsewhere in like school fields or anything else?
Yeah, I always prefer the beaches, and there are just a few great ones, and a few sketchy, and maybe a couple sketchy beaches too. But then there's also tons of, let's see, I'm gonna get back into, yeah. So in terms of like good beaches to land at, the first beach is from Kahana. The first beach is the one we land at as our alternate LZ here, next to the bridge. That's the Punalu'u beach, and that beach extends a long way, very landable, all the way to about here. From here, the next good beach to land at, there's this Sacred Falls beach right here. People have landed at. That's not a bad one. And then the next good one is, this is a horrible one. Don't land there. That is Hau'ula Beach Park. So that is this one here. So we land at on the actual grass here, the park grass, and watch out for campers. But either side of the bathrooms, you can see the right side there is more open, less people camping. That's a great park for landing. You could land at this. I wouldn't land at this cemetery. No, haven't done that. But also here. So Hau'ula Elementary School has a park associated with it that we have landed at a bunch. Right here. That's an option if you can't make it out to a better beach. If you're getting low, it's at the nipple or something. And then I guess you could land at this private school. They got a huge field. People have looked at it. I don't know if anyone's ever actually had to land there. There's plenty of good fields around. I mean, you can see there's a lot of fields, a lot of open areas. Maybe it's tall grass, but plenty of places for you to land as you're making these transitions. That's what I'm looking at. This Hau'ula Community Park you see here, there's actually some of that area is swampy. We've had people land in there and they were like knee deep in water. So the mowed areas are going to be better. This main ball field here is a much better LZ.
Nice.
Yeah, and then in this direction, we've landed at Pounders, which is this like Ie Lohe Beach Park there, or we land at the ball fields here behind PCC. These are good. Any of these farm fields would be fine, you know. Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about kind of how the wind strength changes as you go down the coast on various directions, and like which days would be good to go downwind only versus downwind and coming back?
On that note too, I'm kind of curious, like where are areas that you have to worry about, you know, being pinned, or you're certainly going to hit headwind, maybe making some of the larger, the larger jumps.
Yeah, well, coming back, you're going to have a headwind, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about, is going north is a bit of a tailwind, and it's very, very pleasant and comfortable to do that. Coming back, you're going to be slower, and you're going to need to maximize your glide as best you can to get through that headwind. So you're going to probably be using some amount of bar depending upon your glider and what you can get away with. But what Patrick's saying is, as far as being pinned, definitely there's small scale venturis that set up everywhere, and then there's some larger scale venturis, but the wind will accelerate through all these ravines and gaps, and it accelerates over the ridge tops as it hits them. So depending upon the direction of the day, you just want to be cognizant of that as you're getting established, let's say on the front of each of these ridges, and then park yourself into the wind for a second and get a feel for how strong of a day it is. Do I even want to go in the back? Let's say come into the front of Punalu'u here. If you're getting up somewhat, do you need to go into the back of Sacred Falls, or are you already feeling like it's pretty strong? In which case, you don't really need to go back there. If you did, you're going to always find that it's going to be blowing stronger along these higher ridges in the back. So you kind of have to, on any given day, you'll be making those decisions. You'll be here at the nipple, you're getting high enough. Do you need to work your way deeper back here into Sacred Falls? You can get super pinned back in there. That place really can be a venturi, especially on a more north day. The wind, more northeast, the wind is coming like more straight into that Sacred Falls canyon, and it'll be strong the deeper you go. So yeah, those are decisions that you're going to want to make, or keep that in mind. And then as far as which of the days you decide, do you want to backtrack? That kind of depends on how, you know, what wind direction we'll find. Like on a super east day, at least in the old days when we were on the lower rated gliders, on a super east day, it's probably not worth the effort of chugging your way back. And it's nice to have a goal in mind of, let's see if we can get high and glide out to a certain nice beach or park, and hopefully we can arrange for one of these guys to give us a ride. And we'll often look out for each other and pick people up if that's what's going to happen. And I think that's a great exercise, not to worry about the upwind transitions at first, especially on a more east day. It's going to be a struggle, just like a kind of a grind to get yourself back along each of these ridges up back into the wind, unless it's a day that's maybe a little more northeast. And then just like crossing the bay becomes easier, all those transitions returning will become easier on a day that's a little more northeast. And those days, I would say, would be the more fun ones for you to try returning the way you came, because you'll have a little easier time on a lower rated glider.
And how does the wind strength, like for instance, let's say it's the Punalu'u sensor is showing 10 miles an hour at 115 degrees. What would you expect the wind strength to be doing as you go north towards Kahuku?
Yeah, 10 is already plenty high. Like you're gonna have good ridge lift everywhere you go. And what you'll like, that's a pretty strong day in I think in our the way we think of it now. Like we're happy to fly there when it's like 6 or 7 and we know we're going to have thermals, but 10 miles an hour, that's already like ridge lift territory, but not too strong. And so yeah, you'll find that I think what Patrick is referring to is how the wind, especially on an east day, really does ramp up the further down the coast you go. And it's because these mountains are smaller and don't stop the wind anymore. So the further down you go, the more the wind is hauling. And Keal can attest at his ranch here that the wind, it just it's like unleashed by the time it gets down here. So it'll be probably, if it's like 10 at Kahana, it could be 15, 18 here at Kahuku Golf Course, what we found. I mean, we've landed parked elevatoring down at the golf course here, and that's pretty exciting. So yeah, it definitely picks up. If you're making a decision, you know, want to get high as I can at Sacred Falls and see how far I can go, just be aware that based on whatever strength of the day you're dealing with and how east it is, it could get quite a bit stronger. And even if it's, I wouldn't say just east, even on the north days, it can blow stronger over here because the mountains are not there to stop it. If that makes sense. It's just something we found through experience. You wouldn't really guess that, I don't think, based on looking at the terrain, but that's how it works. Is that what you're asking about, Patrick?
Yeah. Any trouble spots or things that you see, like folks who aren't as familiar with the area, like where people tend to get into trouble over and over and over?
Yeah. Trouble spots.
Like what are the incidents that tends to happen with folks not as familiar with the area in terms of hazards, like clouds, blowback, just picking crappy places to land? What are the types of things that we tend to see?
Yeah, I don't know that clouds and blowback are necessarily things that have happened at any given spot here, other than it does happen to mainly visitors who just are not prepared for our clouds. But yeah, I don't think there's a particular spot where you would be concerned about that. I mean, maybe Sacred Falls area, I would say you need to be very respectful of your cloud clearance and the wind speed. I mean, it can get strong when the wind can get stronger than you might expect back here where it says Kalua you know, that's the Sacred Falls zone I'm talking about. The wind can get strong. You can find a lot less penetration than you were hoping for there. And then the clouds can be extremely inviting and suck you in. pretty readily. So you need to be respectful of of the clouds there. It can get, yeah, some really nice thermals as well, but also some gotchas. And people have gotten into trouble there. We've had some visitors sucked into clouds and over the back at that point.
Yeah, I can tell my little story. I was there with, I think it was Marcel, Patrick, and you, Alex. We were flying there, and there was some discussion on the radio as to whether we should try to go further down, further up the north and down the coastline. I think I had cold feet that day. I wasn't really sure how much I wanted to do it. I felt like doing it, and so I went back to Sacred Falls to gain some altitude, and there were some low cloud that were forming up there, and everything was fine. And as I turned around towards the ocean again, then there was just a wall of cloud in front of me, and there was no escaping it. And I remember Patrick was a little worried and called me out on the radio a couple of times. So I found myself for, I don't know, 3-4 minutes or something like this, completely in the right room. I flew with my compass that I had on my harness, so I didn't quite, was not quite flying straight enough, I think, for my liking, but I had to use my compass. And I got out of the cloud with a good 500 feet in excess of when I entered the cloud. I think it was around 22,000 when I entered the cloud, and I got out of it around 2,500, so I was still being sucked in and going up in the cloud there. Everything was fine, had lots of clearance and everything, but it was not very comfortable, not very comfortable moments. And just because I was walking my way down the ridge line towards the back there in Sacred Falls, I really didn't look over my shoulder as the cloud was forming. And that
I think
was
that's I think that's a great example of what Patrick's talking about as far as a gotcha. It's basically the same thing that can get you at the Kahana Ridge, Pu'upi'e, but it's magnified. So the cloud bank will be bigger, you'll be in more lift and stronger wind, and it's going to be harder to manage. And so you need to be just more respectful, more aware, and just, you know, more observant of these cloud banks that are going to be coming in from the shore. And you don't want to get to the place where you're having to jam through the middle of one and get whited out and hope that you can maintain your heading, because that's not comfortable.
Yeah. Excellent point. I saw Ryan. Ryan, you got another question or something to say?
Yeah, it's has anybody had any, like, a really close call with the helicopters? You're talking about Sacred Falls and whatnot there. Am I the only one that's really nervous about those? Is it anybody been waked by one? Has anybody had an issue where they, you know, thought that it was way too close for comfort, or is it just not that big a deal?
Well, I think at times, there's times where it seems like there's more of them than usual, or there's new pilots who aren't familiar with paragliders, and I feel like we go through phases where seems like there's more close calls than usual, and then it kind of mellows out. Maybe it's all the same pilots for a while and they know how to stay clear of us. But I know for sure, based on having been on airband radio a bunch, that they are super focused on figuring out where we are and avoiding us. But whether that means they know how far away from us we want them to be, either upwind or downwind, I don't think that's true. And I don't think as long as they don't think they're going to hit us, I don't think they're worried about how close they are to us. And I wish they would give us a little more room, but I don't think that's really in their vocabulary.
Nobody's had an issue with getting waked by them.
I think it's a good point, though. You should worry about the helicopters, and you shouldn't assume that they see you. My tendency has always been, if I hear one or see one, I'll do some wing overs no matter where I'm at, or just some kind of like dynamic wing action to get their attention. And it's worked great the times that I've been worried, oh my God, that guy does not see me at all. I'll immediately start doing some wing overs, and I'll see an immediate reaction where they'll veer around me. So I think that's a good bet for anyone if you're worried about a helicopter being too close. Sometimes it might not make a difference. These guys are on a beeline and they know they're going past you. They know they've already seen you. You can do all the wing overs you want, and they don't think they're that far from you. But you might have thought so. So not much you can do about those guys in that situation. But if the bigger worry is that they don't see you, and so I think that's something to stress, to point out.
I mean, about the
I
wake,
had-
have you ever heard about somebody getting waked? That was like the part 2 of Ryan's question.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
not in Hawaii.
Alex, I was transitioning from Kuloa back to Ka'ava, and I had a helicopter go probably like 300 feet upwind and maybe 100 feet above me. And so I started to just go downwind to try to give the wake some time to mellow out. And it wasn't like bad, but it was as bad as you probably think it was for as far away as he was. But it wasn't like I didn't take a collapse or anything. It was just like going through some turbulence. Wasn't crazy.
Well, that might be the first I've ever heard of in 25 years.
Yeah, I was kind of
But Keal, you would be the guy.
I was kind of mildly annoyed because it was blue skies, crystal clear. Dude totally could see me. Like he went around me, but he didn't. He probably went far enough. He thought he could. Like maybe it was 500 feet away. It was pretty. It was a decently far. I wasn't worried about getting hit, but I was for sure concerned about the wake, considering he was a little bit above me, and he was upwind of me, and that drift of the wind would for sure eventually bring that wake to me. And it wasn't like I still think he was plenty far enough away to be safe. Like the wake wasn't anything severe. It was definitely noticeable, but it was mildly annoying more than anything.
Yeah, no, I've never heard of that. That's a tough thing to know or to verify what it is you're feeling or going through. But if you're thinking you got helicopter wake vortices, then maybe you did.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to tell because he was up pretty far away. I mean, the area was at Kuloa. I think if he's any closer, it might have been bad, but that wasn't the main reason I wanted to chime in. The main reason was a couple guys had some questions about clouds, and you touched on it for a little bit about like the front of the cloud. And I'm not sure if they know like where the clouds actually start to create lift. And sometimes, the back of the cloud is not lift at all, it's more sink. So maybe if you want to go into that a little bit with the guys, that might help them a lot.
Yeah, that is a interesting point about clouds. So when we're talking about XC flying and clouds, and typically the upwind side of the cloud will be liftier and the downwind side of the cloud might be sinkier. So sometimes if we're in the situation where we're worried about a cloud that's coming at us from the ocean and we're working our way up over the terrain and we blaze out to the back of that cloud, we hit the downwind side of it first, it'll actually won't be that lifty as we were worried about. And we're like, oh, was I worried about this cloud? It's not going to suck me up. But then as the front of the cloud comes over you, it will be a lot liftier. And you can use that to your advantage when you know that it works that way. But so, yeah, the side of the cloud that's probably going to be the most beneficial to you is the upwind half of it, I would say. Is that what you're referring to, Keal?
Yeah, exactly. Like on my bay crossings, if I'm planning to use like a darker cloud, like on one that I know that's got good lift, I'll usually get high where I know I can still get to it with altitude. And then as I start to get closer and I see my glide ratio get worse and I start seeing some of that initial like not so
Yep.
good air at the backside of the
Right.
cloud, I'll push the
Right.
bar
Yep.
until I start seeing some more zeros on bar. And then when I see the zeros on bar or even, less sink or even some lift, I'll let off the bar
Yeah.
and try to milk that front of cloud and keep
Right.
that keep the front of cloud as long as I can while still going the way I want to go.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I usually
No, that's
bar
good.
through the
That's
back of it.
that's a good fine point of cloud usage that I don't think I was even thinking of getting into, but it's definitely true, and it can be helpful if you know that, as opposed to just saying, hey, there's a cloud, I'm gonna aim for that, and then not knowing why parts of it are working better than other parts.
Yeah, because I think in the beginning of my like cross country, I would get get to the cloud and I'd be like, okay, I'm onto the cloud, it's gonna work. And it was worse than before.
Right.
And so it wasn't until Drew and Mark were drunk talking about the front of bus and back of bus thing that it kind of
Yeah.
clicked.
Right.
But yeah, that was pretty much it. I know I wanted to touch on that so the guys, because that was
Yeah.
like an aha moment almost for me when in my
Yeah,
career.
no, that's very valuable. Thank you.
Cool.
And what
yeah,
else we got, Patrick?
I see Olivier's got his hand up, and then that's kind of I would say that's pretty much the beginner zone, right? Because going south of Swansea's is pretty basic, right? Just bopping along over to Kahava and to Kula. That's pretty simple.
Yeah, right. There's less gotchas, less to worry about there. Yeah.
Yeah.
If
So
we're staying in front, we're not talking about the pyramid, and the pyramid is also part of the Kahana neighborhood, I would say.
yeah. Let's hit Olivier's question, and then maybe we can talk about like, yeah, going to high, like if this is grade school, then what's going to high school, like the, a pyramid or jumping to the back range or any of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I look forward to that one. I don't really have a question. It's just more of my experience with helicopters. So going back to that, I think it was at Kahava, and I had one particular instance where two helicopters came. One was maybe 150 to 100 feet below me and just went between my legs. So that was not a pleasant experience. Clearly, the guy didn't see me. And I don't think they're looking up necessarily. And I was, I don't know, 25, 2,800 feet or something like this. So the guy came really close. And within minutes, another one came. This one was downstream of me, about the same altitude, also about maybe 200 feet or so away. Probably same thing, didn't see me. It was downstream, downwind of me, so there was no questions about wake turbulence or anything like this. But that was really uncomfortable. And it's been a while since I decided to actually carry some of the time an aviation radio when I know I'm going to be flying around this place for more than just an hour. Then I carry my aviation radio. I broadcast on CTAF that we are at Kaava, and there are paragliding activity on the ridges between 1,500 and 2,500 feet or something like this. And I've seen and I heard and I've talked to helicopters. They tend to be more aware now that there are people, and they will divert a little bit more inland and away from us. So I found that my experience is broadcasting a little bit on the radio, on aviation CTAF, helps them becoming aware that they are active, that there's activity, and they tend to diverge around us. That's my 2 cents.
Noted.
Yeah. Good.
Let's actually, you know what? Keal, let's hear some foibles, man. You've had a meteoric rise up to XC Charger. Are there any pearls of things to avoid for the pilots who haven't themselves gotten into trouble that you can share, like with rotor or landing where you don't want to, that kind of stuff?
Let me get it off mute. You have to explain what a foibles is. But
Foible. It means a fuck up. A
Foible.
foible.
Oh, dude, I do those every day.
I was like, where do you even start?
Right? Don't land in trees. Trying to land in that lady's yard, even though she's really nice. I think the biggest first initial scare for me was not understanding the Punalu'u range and how much it turns into the wind, or down, like how much it turns with the edge of the wind. And so I was going over the highest point on Punalu'u. Went over it the first time, I don't know, maybe 500 feet above ground level at the highest point of the peak, and it was like pretty rough. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So then, I decided I should go over it lower, and it was really bad. So that was, I think, the 2 points I got out of that was just always try to be aware of wind direction and how much it changes on the island. And then the second thing that I think Jack told me that stuck with me forever is if you're unsure of wind direction, if you're doing 30 miles an hour, you're going downwind. So if you're doing 30 miles an hour and you go over the top of some sort of land structure, there's a really good chance you're flying straight into the rotor. And so that was kind of one of those more aha moments that most people that are more cautious probably would realize, but not me. But yeah, that's it right there on camera right now. And for whatever reason, I mean, you still, even looking at it in that picture, I feel like it would be more windwardy.
So just to get our landmarks here. So you were flying along the outside of the ridge here.
No, straight over the top of the ridge.
Okay.
And so I pushed directly over that highest peak down the ridge line.
Okay, yeah. Towards the pyramid.
Yeah.
And then somewhere around here you get into some gnarly air.
It was immediately after that highest peak.
Oh, this guy here.
Yeah,
Like right in there.
so I think that's where, yeah. If that, no, I think it'd be more to the ocean from there.
Um,
Is that north up direction or is that just spun however?
no, north's kind of off to our right.
Yes,
On a northeast wind day, you start kind of getting into the lee as because that ridge kind of
Yeah,
bends around the corner.
exactly is what, yeah. So that highest peak right there in the middle of the range. Yep. So I went directly over that, over the spine and just got totally whacked. And it was totally like definitely flew straight into the lee. Like didn't turn, didn't even think about it. I was just by myself having the best day ever.
How high up were you? Like how high above the ridge?
The first time I went over it, I had probably 500 feet over the ridge. I think I was at like 2,700. I'm trying to remember my fly sky high. And then the second time I went over it, I had maybe 200 feet over the top of the ridge, somewhere in there. Not much. And I made it, I'd have to look at my track again. I made it maybe a couple hundred feet past it before just getting destroyed.
All right, so
And I
you're
was
so you're
like,
taking collapses, your glider shooting all over the place, and then what? You just bail out towards the pond, and then you're okay.
yeah, so I think what I lost so much altitude, I think I got away from the actual mechanical rotor, the real bad stuff, and I was just in the lee, and then I punched out the front on bar, and it wasn't super unpleasant, but it wasn't awful either. And then I got lift as I rounded that corner to come back, like you would from Pyramid, like Mark would from Pyramid.
Yeah. So it sounds
I
like
came
maybe
out.
this
Go ahead.
spine here might have been kicking off the lee that you felt. So if you're right over it going this way, then all the stuff that's kicking off this spine here is maybe what
Yeah,
got you.
it's
Yeah.
probably what it was. If when I looked at my track, even though I was tracking down the spine, my ground speed was like 32 miles an hour on a Rush 6. So I was definitely going downwind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was something. I mean, I think I asked Alex. I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "Yeah, no one flies there for a reason, you idiot." And I didn't say it that way, but. And then I think the other early mistake I made was super early. It was going to Pu'u on it was still at East Day. We launched from East Launch, but it was like probably closer to like 90 or 100 degrees on the sensor. And I was going along the ridge below ridge height, and I tucked behind one of those fingers
Okay.
and back by Pu'u on that last, like the last big finger before you get
Like
to
here.
Pu'u. Yeah, I think,
One of
yeah, I
this one,
tucked
maybe.
behind that kind of like that ridge height, then I lost like half the wing because that was like my, I don't know, 10th flight or something. That was a super fun thing to do.
Yeah, I think we've all encountered our first scares, like at some version of that story. I know I have, like catching stuff like when you're too low going back to Pu'u.
Yeah, I think just like being more aware. Like I think it's not a problem for other people that spend more time, paying attention to their instrument and their ground speed and their creep and stuff like that. It's probably not as big of a deal, but like I just kind of fly places and don't put a lot of thought I'm getting better now, but in the beginning I didn't put a lot of thought process into how I'm getting there or how I'm going to get back. And so I would find myself in some pretty bad places pretty often.
Yeah, and then your lady that you bought her a steak or something after you landed in her yard over here.
Oh yeah, the
What was
lady
the
I
story of
brought.
that one?
So she was sick. She had COVID or something. She was so sweet. She was like, yeah, you're not. She's like, you're the 8th person to land in my yard, and I think you did the best. She was just the sweetest thing in the world. She was so nice. So I dropped the thing of steaks off with a note at her mailbox, and so it was in a cooler. So I'm pretty sure she saw him. But the neighbor was all grumpy. He's like, even though I didn't touch any of his stuff, but I saw him later down the road, and he apologized for being grumpy. He said he was just in a really bad mood that day, and he's really nice too. But I think
was it the volleyball
go ahead.
house? The volleyball court house?
It was the next one. It was the Kahana side one from the volleyball. I was gonna do volleyball, and then I did that ladies because there was less power lines, but I didn't understand how much her yard slopes downhill, and I didn't have any I didn't have any skill set for pumping in or slowing down. Like I think if like now I it wouldn't have been an issue. I could have just pumped it in, no problem. But I just kept gliding and the ground kept going away from me as I was going down the hill. I mean, Alex saw the whole thing. It's pretty funny. I mean, it was fine. I landed on my feet, but then I didn't kill the wing. Like if I landed on my feet and immediately killed the wing would have just fallen in the lady's yard. But since I landed on my feet and didn't do anything, the wing flew into the tree that I was standing at the bottom of.
And then what was the sequence of events that led you into being in that situation?
I came into the gravel pit at like 650, maybe 700. No, it's probably higher than that. Like I was losing altitude the whole time in the gravel pit. I think if I immediately aborted when I didn't get lift, I probably could have made Swanseas.
But here's our
Most
gravel
likely.
pit in here.
Yeah. But I just was losing. And then I think I departed at 600.
Okay.
No, I think I came in 750 and departed at 600, 620, something like that. I think in hindsight, if it ever happens to me again, I can't make Swanseas, I'll just land in the water and lay my wing on the rocks just to avoid, because you have all the space in the world to put it down. It's ankle deep. Yeah, your stuff gets wet, but I feel like that's your safest of horrible options.
Yeah, and then so since then you've recalibrated kind of your altitude cutoffs on when you can retreat versus when you plug on.
Yeah, I don't really have like a cutoff. I think it just depends on the day. I'd like to come in over the top of the ramp at 800 or something like that, whatever that is.
Over here.
790.
Yeah.
That's what I would prefer. I don't, and then like if the day's strong, and so I think that day specifically, the decision that got me in trouble was there was a gust front, not like a gust front, but like you could see some white caps on the water. It was getting a little stronger. There's some dark clouds. And so I was like, oh, it's fine. I'll pull into the gravel pit. It'll be pumping and I'll get boosted out. And I pulled it in the gravel pit and that little bit of white capping didn't make it yet. And it was just dead in there, just still. And so I didn't have a plan B. There's just no flow in there at all. And Alex was just cruising overhead, having a great old time.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I found, I think like if you can make it to this ramp with like 600, that's totally comfortable to make a nice approach to Swanseas.
Yeah.
500 is doable, but
I mean, I think I even could have made Swanseas. I just panicked when I looked over there and saw the power lines and that antenna. And, I don't know. I didn't want to find out I wasn't going to clear the power lines after I just made my decision to go to Swanseas.
yeah.
And so I turned down, and that yard looked a lot bigger than it was, in my opinion.
Nice.
But yeah, I think in hindsight, the one thing Drew told me after that was like, dude, why don't you just land in the water? And yeah, it sucks to get your feet wet, but so much safer to just land, 10 feet from the beach right there in that 1 foot of water.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I did.
I mean, I don't
a diamond
want to
head
get there again, but
I chose the water.
Yeah, a diamond head.
No,
Cool.
sorry, if I can just hold it 1 second. When Keal was talking about taking a whack in the back towards Pupia there, I told you that I have my triggers when I'm crossing the bay and catching lions there. And I try to stick systematically to my trigger altitude to turn around. It's the same thing when I climb up in the front of a Kahana. I generally don't start transitioning back towards the PA below 1500. So generally I try to climb up 1600 and then I turn around and go to PA, but never below that altitude. So, but that's my personal trigger, and this comes from my instructor who told me to do that. So I've been sticking to that approach, and it's been fine so far.
Yeah.
I think with that transition, I think a lot of new guys, like even myself, I remember going over that saddle on like lighter days and not understanding how brutally rough that can be. And it made it a lot more pleasant crossing that at no lower than 1400 for just the thermic activity and that little saddle behind Rhino.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes on the light days, that's where you're going if you need to get up. But yeah, for sure, it can be punchy.
Yeah, and I think for like a newer guy, I remember just thinking that it wasn't good. Even now we at the stage where we kind of seek that air out, but it definitely, if you can get up above 1400, the transition is like butter to the back.
Yeah, I wanted to check in with Marcel here because until just a few months ago, he was like flying all over the place, all through the range, all over the island on his B wing. And I think a lot of the times people are pretty quick to just jump to hotter gear to do the types of flights that they see the other more experienced pilots doing. In my opinion, you're definitely better off like staying on your lower end gear as long as you can because it teaches you better piloting and you have to be more patient to get more height, do everything, and you have to think about your margins more. And so you just like your skills get better when you're not, just upgrading the gear. So I'm curious if Marcel has any thoughts from his long time he spent on, on his B wing, on his Explorer, cruising around doing pretty much all the same stuff that the guys on the two liners are doing, just maybe taking longer and more patient.
Yeah, I'd say like trying to cross the bay on a lower performing wing. If you're not the first to cross, I'd find myself on the radio checking in with people like, hey, what height did he leave the front at, or what height did he leave the back at? And then, what height did you arrive at crouching line? And that sort of gives you an indication, or would give me an indication. All right, so if Alex left at 2000, I need to try to get up to like 2500. But yeah, some little macros from other people for sure. Sometimes as I'm starting the crossing, I would actually like look at someone else's track if I wasn't sure how they crossed the bay to make it around on a particular day. Like I'd pull it up on live track on my phone just to see like how big of an arc, someone better than me made like on a super east day. Yeah, just like you said, I think you just have to be slower, try to get higher. But for sure, like a bunch of times I've come in lower than most people, at the ramp at Hidden Valley. So I've got plenty of experience trying to work my way up from there, and also landing in a garden when I didn't make it.
More fun.
Yeah, sometimes down low on that ramp, if you get below like sort of a threshold, like below 500, sometimes it's just not lifting the way you think. It's like somehow sliding off the front of that corner. It's not coming up the way you expect. So yeah, like Patrick said, if you get it there at 600, if you can get sort of the top of that ramp, where then it has a little dip and then joins the bigger ridge. If you can make it to that little corner, then you're normally set. And sometimes when I was just scratching down sort of below that, I found that there's a little bit better lift just away from the ridge sometimes. So sometimes if you're sort of more towards the beach side as it ramps down, sometimes like I found if you just try pushing like away from it as if you're sort of flying to Swansea's, but a little bit to the right. And sometimes I've found little climbs where I can actually get enough lift to make it like a 360, and then I've got up from there. But yeah, like Patrick said, probably like 500 bail out to Swansea's for sure. But I had the one time where I was pretty low, and I tried to go to Swansea's, and I wasn't going to make it because of the power lines, so I ended up landing on that little gravel corner because I sort of turned a little bit more crosswind just to make sure I cleared the power lines, and then I sort of bent back and ended up landing in that little gravel corner. But yeah.
Do you remember what altitude you left the ramp with on that day?
It was probably like four something.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I was getting lower, and I didn't want to land on the garden. I was like, I think I can make it. and then I started going and I hit like a bit of sink and I was like, oh crap. It's like I might not clear the power lines, because you're still kind of pushing slightly upwind.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, all right, I kind of was going with Keal's idea. I was like, my main thing is I just want to clear the power lines. And then if I have to touch down, put in the water, I will. But then kind of going over the power lines, then I got a little bit of lift, over the road kind of, and then I could just snuck my way to that front corner. But yeah.
Yeah. How is it? It looks like big boulders, kind of. Is it
No,
bouldery?
it was actually, it was totally fine. They were just like, I don't know. They're not, yeah, it was totally fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you're right. I mean, I just barely made it, so it wasn't totally fine, but the rock sizes were sufficient.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say, if you're flying with other people, we're just crossing the bay, just ask people what height they left at, what height they arrived at. Kind of try to track their line. Yeah.
Something I found myself doing often in the beginning was exactly that, just using like Live Track 24 and looking at someone, not Alex, because it doesn't matter what he did, but somebody that crossed on like a similar style wing to what I would be flying that day. And then if they made it, maybe, follow that line, but you also have to make sure, maybe they used a big cloud, but still just using that Live Track 24 while you're flying to see where they went helped a ton. They always went wider than I would have in the beginning. When I was just starting to cross, everyone was going way wider than what you feel makes the most sense, but clearly it's better.
Yeah. Cool. Let's kick back to Alex, and you can maybe kind of take us through, like, okay, once you've sort of put together like the Punalu'u back and the bay crossing, kind of what are like when you would maybe think about toying with the back range or the pyramid or anything with like more grander ambitions.
Yeah, we shall pull up my screen here. Okay. You can hear me? I'm not muted. Am I
Yeah, we
muted?
hear you. Yep. we can hear
Okay,
you.
good. Yeah. All right. So, I mean, in these days, I think we've sort of gotten to a point now where we include the pyramid as the border of our neighborhood that we play in on any average day. And I actually meant to start out this whole presentation with the idea that it's worth coming out to Kahana on any average day because the chances of flying XC at Kahana are the highest. On any average day with average cloud base, average wind speed, it's going to be strong at Makapu. Probably not going to be a good XC day. They're just a lot more rare over there. And whereas at Kahana, we really are making some kind of cross country happen, and often good cross country on days when it's brisk at Makapu. We actually might have a light thermic day where we're figuring out some thermals and some transitions at Kahana, and it's worth trying to get out here as often as you can for that reason. I think your progression will be more rapid. There's just more to learn as far as that goes on more days. On the great days at Makapu, there's some good XC you can do, Waimanalo, Olamana, and beyond, but those days just are a lot less frequent than they are at Kahana. So anyway, we've started to include the pyramid as one of the stops on our neighborhood route when we're not thinking of going to the back range, and I think that's worth including as something that we could discuss. But in terms of the back range, you can see the back range extends from like Waihole over here. It comes around behind Boogaland and it comes out to Sacred Falls here. So I always find that if I'm curious about what the back range is like, it has a front section here at Sacred Falls that will give you a hint. So you can go to Sacred Falls and get a pretty good idea of what the main part of the range is going to feel like. And certainly, even if you track back a little ways, you're going to get a better and better idea. So you don't really have to make a big jump away from Kahana to get a sense of, is this going to be a fun day or comfortable day on the back range? And I think that's a lot of times what it's about is the comfort level that you want to expect on the back range. The back range is generally going to be bigger air, you're going to get higher, you're going to get more into clouds, and have to figure that out. So it's worth getting an idea of what kind of a day it is that you want to get back there. I find myself, I don't want to go to the back range unless we're thermaling. If we're just ridge soaring the front ranges, the front foothills here, Kahana, Punalu'u, Kuloa, Ka'ava, I don't want to track back and find out how strong the ridge soaring is going to be on the big mountains in the back. And people have done that with various degrees of success, but for sure on the lighter days where you're actually having to thermal on these front ridges, the back range is going to be nice and pleasant for thermaling generally. I mean, just in terms of wind speed. So that's one of the criteria I use. If I'm not thermaling, I don't want to go back and find out how much ridge lift is on the big one.
So what are some for somebody on like let's say a high B with some experience, like picking out their landings and some wind control skill, maybe they've done SIV, like what type of day, what sort of factors you're looking at that would be okay to go back to the pyramid, and how might you do it?
Yeah. So going back to the pyramid, it's I guess it's a little more committing than some of the other jumps the transitions that we were talking about making along the front of all these features, where we're staying near beaches, we're out in the sort of front zone of the wind. If you fade back to the pyramid, you're looking at the chances of a lot more thermaling going to be happening there. It's not just going to be a ridge soaring mission, which it could be on these front ridges on a lot of days. You won't have to be too strong of a thermaler to figure out how to make jumps between these ridges on the front. But as you get into the back areas,
does everyone know where the pyramid is?
yeah, do we all know what we're talking about? The pyramid right here, this guy. That is the pyramid. You can
If
see
you're
it from
flying,
pretty much, you can see it as you're driving to Kahana. It's pretty much like the central, the linchpin of Boogaland and the front hills that we fly, and Kaneohe there.
It's in
So
Jurassic
that,
Park.
yeah, that's the pyramid. And it's just it's a great, beautiful feature for us to fly around, and it's got a lot to teach us and offer, I think. But yeah, as far as what days to go there, I want days where, same as if I were going to the back range, I want days where I'm thermaling. If I'm just ridge soaring the front ridges, I'm not going to tag the pyramid on that day. I think some people will, not naming names, but I don't find it comfortable when it's that strong back there and you're just kind of parked and barely moving in some ridge lift, maybe mixed with thermals back there. But on a day when it's thermic out front, it will be nice and thermic on that pyramid, and for sure not too strong in terms of airflow. But then you do have to watch for clouds. So the pyramid isn't that high of a feature. It's 2260, I think, and it's just it's not that comfortable if you go back there and it's like the clouds are barely above it, and so you're not going to be able to get that high under those clouds to get out of there. Going back to the pyramid, it's nice if you have a light northeast flow that goes right through Jurassic Valley up to that pyramid. And then coming back, it's nice if you can get to maybe 3 grand over the pyramid. So if you don't have clouds that high, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. But if the cloud base is high, or if it's sparse enough clouds, you can get to 3 grand over the pyramid and come back out front. You'll come back out with a comfortable altitude to pull back in front of Ka'ava. And the line to come out is pretty much just going to be straight down the valley with plenty of landings all the way. You could air to one side or the other. Generally, people air over to the north side of the valley. If you're not sure, if you want to be like maybe looking for some lift along the way. But if it's a more north day, that could be pretty lee side and not so pleasant.
Can you tell us the altitude that you're choosing and the line you tends to take on more easterly day or a more northerly day?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's see if I can take a screenshot and draw on this a little bit. Did that work? Here, take a picture. Okay. So typically, I like to get to the pyramid, getting high here, and then track along that ridge line and pull in front of it here. But that's generally going to be probably on a more northeast day when the wind is coming down. And then I'll get to my 3 grand and come back out this way and try to get back in front here. On a more easterly day, I might get to the pyramid and return from the pyramid over here, get as high as I can here, get back to the pyramid, get high, come back around here, because that easterly wind might cause some sink here that I don't really want. So staying on the east side of Kuloa is often a good approach. Some days the flow is not that strong that you worry about it either way, and you can take both routes. You can, you can take one route this way, get up over the pyramid, come back this way, and you've done a really nice loop. Or the other way. It's pretty fun if you can do that. But it depends on the strength of the flow and the given day if that's something you want to try. And there's plenty of us with experience tagging that pyramid often enough that we'll have good input for you on a given day, like what's the best route.
And you want to talk a little bit about the landings? Like, let's say you are at the pyramid, you're trying to come back around the east route, like on the outside of Kualoa. And if you start getting drilled and it's not looking good,
Right.
like what are some options?
Sure, hang on. So that's definitely a thing that can happen. So even if you think it's an easterly day and you've decided you're going to come back along the east side of Kuloa, it can be hard. You want to still get as high as you can and work any clouds that might come along to help you, but you're going to be coming around and looking at possibly landing at this crappy nut farm here. Plenty of people have done that. So these tourist areas that says Secret Island here, these fields are all okay to land at. As if you're getting drilled there. If you get a little farther along, we've landed right here at the ranch. You come limping in here a few 100 feet, you think, oh, I'm going to get a low save over these trees, but you just never are going to. And so you'll land in the ranch here. They don't like it, and they'll probably come to you with a pickup truck and say, we don't want you to land here, get in the truck, we'll get you out of here. And that's fine. But they're not super mad about it. It's just they don't appreciate it. So we're polite and we get in the truck. But yeah, it's actually, I mean, it's one of our better lines in terms of having a lot of options for bailing. So you're going to need them on some days. It's just really hard not to have to land in some of those spots. But generally, that's where it's going to be. Either the nut farm here, or maybe you're low enough to squeak into the ranch somewhere here, but you're just not going to get up from there if you're that low. You're gonna want to be like probably half the ridge height to have a chance to like scratch your way back up when you come into the front here.
Nice. I want to give some time for just like open QA for the other there's a few other folks on, but I also wanted to check back. Yeah, we got Lewis on, who's been flying a bunch, and he is also on the more modest gear on B-wings and stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been seeing it like the last few before he had his baby and he was actually flying Kahana. I'd see him all over the place, like going wherever he wanted. So
right.
Oh yeah, that's right. Now he's Sunrise Lewis, Jack points out, and he's still been crushing, just not when I'm there. Yeah. So yeah, Lewis, what did you figure out, like kind of coming up through the ranks?
Just muted and still, I guess, beginnerish, intermediate, pretty conservative. Can I share my screen? Let's see. Alex, I think I have to. Oh, looks like
You should be able to kick Alex off if you've got that
I
little
think I'm
green
off
share
already.
screen. Oh yeah. On your menu bar next to participants is where it is for me. Between participants and reactions is the share screen.
I haven't really gone north at Kahana much at all, but I seem intimidated with how far you're away from the beach for a landing. But I like to cross the bay. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Sorry, the blue line. Um, yeah, I have a video I could pull up.
Well, while you're working on that and pulling that up, does anybody want to pepper Alex with any questions while Lewis is bringing up his tech stuff?
Just one question, so like, when you had the pyramid, maybe one day I'll get there. You said you consistently mentioned 3,000 to go back. That's your.
That's not a hard number, but it's just a nice number. Like that's what I'm hoping I'll be able to get to. Like, and certainly if we're getting like 25 in the front, and then I think it's reasonable to expect that you'll get higher in the pyramid. So you get 25 in the front, that's a great height to drop back. And then you get to that pyramid, work your way up. If you only get 25, that's only 300 feet above that thing. I mean, that's a height. That's not a great height. And you're going to hope for, let's say, some clouds along the way, or maybe a good thermal in a pocket of the terrain or something to boost you to continue all the way out of there. Because you know, we've come out of that valley super low, and you can try and fight your way up on the front of Kaava there, and it's amazing how low you can actually save yourself there. So don't give up too early, but definitely keep good landings in reach as you're getting low on the front there. 3,000 will be very comfortable, I would say.
Yeah, and that's
But
like
you're flying hot enough wings now, Olivia. You're probably not going to suffer if you started with less than 3,000.
Yeah, I try to. I clearly try to break the mold with going to a C wing much too early, and I'm fully aware that I'm a B pilot flying a C wing. So I try not to go down in these directions especially when you say it's mostly on thermic days that you're going to be flying there. I try not to go on this day with thermic on a C wing. I'd rather fly B if I try to explore and push my own boundaries there. C is I'm just gonna fly around. I know I can cross the bay much more easily and stuff like this. So I'm enjoying flying the Cs. I'm learning, but I'm not gonna push the envelopes on this one. So the pyramid is probably not for tomorrow on the C for me.
good points about building some margin, Olivier, into your gear selections there. Cool. Looks like we got Lewis up in action with his track log here. Let's hear what this is
Yeah.
all about.
This is the morning flight, bay crossing. I was gonna say it's my typical line. I'm getting as high as possible and staying high. As Alex covered a lot, and it's following the outside of the breakers. But then you could see this flight. You typically scratch. Since I get lower than everybody else, like at 600 or 700 feet here. By the time you get there, and it could take you a while to get out of there, but once I usually set like a cutoff when I get there at like say like 550 feet, and that's been fine to get across. Like other times it's just a straight line and then there's no lift. But I could share a video to give like a low perspective that people would see. All right, I just switched it to my desktop. Can you
We're still looking at the track log.
no? Yeah.
Yeah, we still got the
Yeah,
track log up.
We're looking at one where you didn't make it up at Swanzy's.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I have to show
Yep.
them.
There's the video.
But there's Swanzy's.
As well.
But this would be like a typical area I would be scratching normally to get lift. Right along
Yep.
ridge here. at like 650, or kind of just patiently waiting for a thermal or wind to come along. And after a few minutes, usually I get something. But then if I can get up to like 900 feet, then I'll just skip out of here because it's slow and boring, and go around to here. And this is where like you get a lot of lift all the time, like really fast. But if you have trouble while you're treading water along, getting around to the front of this, you could possibly land at the school field up ahead or back at Swanzy's. But it's typically like an upwind flight. So it's easy to turn back and go downwind. But then you never really know how far to go into this valley. So I just take like a little bite at a time. Because this is some good rotor here, but I've never experienced that because I just go a little bit further each time. Yeah, I'd hate to experience that, but yeah, as long as I set a cutoff, always have plenty of altitude to get to Swansea's. But that's really, I just want to show you like the lower perspective that Alex never sees.
Yes, I do. Once a year or so, and then I'm like, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
That looks nice in the morning. Everything's like sitting right in the bright sun. Like actually looks pretty inviting.
It looks
Yeah.
amazing in the morning. That's my favorite view. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Not super thermic though. I wouldn't wait too long for a thermal if it's like 7 in the morning.
Something comes up through there. Whenever you're scratching there waiting, eventually there'll be a puff of better air bringing you lift, and then it just gradually gets easier and easier climbing up. Sorry, I was trying to stop sharing my screen, but yeah, as you get higher there, it's just so much easier. You're not scratching on those little horns and hills that stick out.
Yeah, it's so awesome when you finally make it over there. It's like arriving at Valhalla.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. I think that's the main thing I've learned, like in the few years I've been flying there. It's like the process is a lot more interesting than the actual goal. So like having like a hotter wing now and pretty much making it across like whenever it's a reasonable day, it's not nearly as like exciting and interesting to do because it's not as hard, right? When you have to sit there for like 2.5 hours trying a ton like on your low B and waiting for like the perfect cloud streak to come in, and you milk it perfectly, and you're working all those tiny little micro adjustments on the bar and turning into the lift pockets and like speeding through the synchronous pockets. And you have to do that all day, and then you connect on the other side. It's like you just won the lottery, compared to on like you go on a 2-liner, it's like zing, and you're there like woo. I remember one time asking Mark like what altitude he left with when he was on a Xena or something. He's like, I don't know. It didn't even compute into his equation.
Yeah, it's something I had to like try not to get frustrated with and like enjoy the view and the challenge.
Totally. Yeah.
The day.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
one thing I meant to just reference briefly, and I totally left it out, is the idea, and maybe we've sort of alluded to this, but the idea that as you're progressing, just getting as high as you can and plumbing the lines across the bay and getting a feel for which lines are productive and which ones aren't, and how far you can go and come back, and how you arrive when you get back. That's like super important exercise to do. So the more of those little trips you can fit into your day at Kahana, the better it's going to be for your bay crossing experience, because you're going to get a pretty good idea of different direction days, what kind of lines, how the clouds are helping or not. And you may not cross the bay on those days, but a few sorties in that direction will teach you a lot. And that experience will add up to the point where you'll understand what your margins are a lot better than if you didn't do that.
Yeah. Super good point. Anybody have anything burning you want to cover? We're at like the 2 hour mark almost, so I think we should wrap it here. And we're definitely have to break this one up into some like part 1 through 5 or something, or chapters.
Hey, quick question here. Long time listener, first time caller, guys. Joined late, so forgive me if this was covered. But is there a DNL file for Oahu, Kahana in particular?
No, we don't have a DNL file. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think no. Basically, it's just kind of like accumulated knowledge of like what's safe and what's not. It's not so
Yeah.
much DNLs as there's a few good landings and the rest are you just wouldn't want to land in someone's yard, you know?
Right.
Yeah. But there's beaches, open fields, and we try to land in beaches and the bigger fields and parks. Yeah.
I mean, if we were
But
gonna
yeah.
make one though, the volleyball field, the volleyball lawn would be probably the one to put on there because it looks inviting. But
Well, so along those lines too, I want to point out, I think it was Ian landed in a yard over there, not one of the bigger ones, one of the little creepy smaller yards he made it into unscathed. And the lady comes out, she's like, "You okay?" He's like, "Yeah, sorry." She's like, "No, it's all right. You just probably want to get out of here before the boys get home." He's like, "Oh, okay." Thanks. Like she wasn't mad, but when the boys get home, they're gonna hear about this. So yeah, I don't know.
That reminds me of a thought process that I had recently when I did a hike and fly in Montana. I was really scouting for a launch, and I was honing into one particular, but the landing zones. There's a lot of private property. So when I started talking to the Bozeman crew, they really told me just don't land in any of the property there. You really take a chance of being shot at.
Yeah, right.
And so I did my flight. I landed in a public park, so it was fine. But one thing in Hawaii we have is people get angry. They may call the cops, but they're very unlikely going to shoot. So there's an advantage that we have here, I think, in that sense. That was just my little anecdote then.
yeah, I would say if you're like for visitors, the one hazard that you might not be ready for is just like the fishing poles. You can, if it's a section of the beach where there's fishermen set up, you won't necessarily see their poles until you're pretty low and you're kind of committed, and then you'll all of a sudden you see just like rows and rows of tall poles that are like, you know, more than 10 feet up off the sand with their line streaming out, and you know, it can be pretty gnarly. So anywhere you see the good thing is those fishermen are super lazy, and they will not like put a pole up and then walk like even 100 feet away. They're going to be pretty close to their poles. So if you can't see any humans on the beach, it's a pretty good chance you're not going to have fishing poles nearby either. And close to parking lots. So if you go on a section of beach that's more than like a 1-minute walk from a car, almost no fishermen. They're extraordinarily lazy. So
And there's always leading the kids astray by flying a little bit down the beach and then cranking 180 and landing where they're not going to like swarm right under your feet as you're touching them.
yeah. They can't run that fast downwind, so you got to like pretend like you're gonna land and up here, yeah, and then you do that quick downwind juke, and in like a few seconds you're like 100 feet away, and they can't catch up to get underneath you. Cool.
Until
I think
they watch this recording, and then
yeah, totally. All right, let's wrap this thing. That was pretty sweet. I think there's a lot of, man, I can't imagine if I had something like this to watch when I was a Kahana noob. That's unreal. So thanks to everybody that joined in, and yeah, we'll maybe get this up online in the next couple of days, but I don't know, I might break it up into chapters and stuff first. We'll see.
I think I'm trying to upload one of my last, I don't know if it's gonna go though, because I'm on my phone. One of my last crossings and then straight to Pyramid on Fly Sky High, but it might not be working.
Well, that was anticlimactic, Keal. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it was going, and then now it's not. I'm an illiterate computer person.
Are you guys flying?
Or just illiterate.
Are you guys flying Kahana pretty regularly still this time of year?
No, actually,
at
very
all?
irregularly right now. Like I haven't had
Okay.
a, yeah, it's been maybe 5 flights since November, like just not
Oh,
even,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
We've been flying
Yeah.
everywhere else, with different levels of success, but yeah, it's not the time of year we expect to fly Kahana much. Some years we might get a winter where we get more days than usual, but not this winter. This winter's been pretty classic. Turned off the trade winds and turn on the weird winds.
It's
That,
sent. I don't know if you guys can see it though. It says it's sent.
No, I just saw Mike though, but I don't see your screen sharing, Keel.
It's in chat because I'm on my phone. So I
Yeah,
just sent a
edit text
file
Oh.
in chat.
just download.
Oh, we have to click to download.
I don't know. You
Yeah,
gotta
Okay.
but
use
too bad
Here,
mail.
all the people will see the replay.
I'll try it.
that was going to be
Secret.
my next question is anybody going out between now and next Saturday? Because I've been looking at the wind and it looks like really disgusting. Very heavy, strong northern winds and northeastern winds.
Yeah, and then it's going to turn strong southeast is what we're seeing. So we don't see a lot of anything good in the near future.
I'm trying to open Keel's thing. My QuickTime player is like bouncing, but oh wait,
I don't know.
here we go.
It-
No, I think it's going. Okay, I'm gonna.
Well, I
screen
can see
share.
the pyramid at 2,500 feet.
Here we go. So we're over. You guys, you with me here?
This is a sunrise with Alex after he made me go to the Bitcoin, and then I think we went to pyramid together. You remember that day? You're like, you can
I
keep
sure do.
going. I think
I
it was
sure do.
decently north, and every day it was pretty lifty out, but it's a pretty typical pyramid and back
Yeah,
line.
yeah, that was a great one. That's good. That's good. You have that illustration. Yeah, there you go.
Cool. Yeah. So pretty much right back up the crest. How was the air
Yeah.
on the way back from Pyramid there?
It's sunrise, so it's just Bodhi, so it's like not
Okay.
really
Yeah.
the best description of it, but it's definitely the same line you would take. You just maybe would want to go, to 3 grand instead of leaving like 26.
Yeah. So like right there, you just left the spot. That's where Jack always pulls in, right? To top up. He'll
Yeah, I
yeah.
like to top up there too.
yeah, he doesn't like leaving high and then like getting close into the clouds and stuff. He'll bail like super early and then just go over to this thermal and then bench up there and then go the rest of the way.
Yeah, because it's always there.
Yeah.
It is a great spot. Yeah.
Sometimes you can top up there and just go through the back too and land it Kahana to the back.
Yeah, if it's super light. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. No, there was one time I wasn't there and I had to get a ride from the Jurassic Valley people. Never
Oh,
mind.
wasn't there.
Lets
Yeah.
you down.
It's always there, except when it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works, what, 100%, 80% of the time?
6% of the time it works every time. That's how I
All
live my
right,
life.
everybody.
Man.
Let's wrap this thing. Good night. Nice work. Way
Thanks,
to
Patrick.
build a brick upon the knowledge of Oahu flying, everybody. Solid work.
Thank you
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Hopefully see you soon.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right.
Talk soon.
Night.